بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. My name is Asad, and for a change today I'm going to be your host instead of Taqib, because we have finally removed the dictator.
Allahu Akbar.
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. And with me is my co-host Abdul Sami Arjumand.
Assalamu alaikum.
And here he is, the main man. Not really.
No longer the main man.
Assalamu alaikum.
Today we have a very special guest all the way from Ireland, Abeer Shahid.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam. Abeer is the editor-in-chief, one of the editors-in-chief of Ihyaa magazine, a culture magazine based in the UK, which makes it a bit weird because he's the editor in Ireland. So, Abeer, how are you doing today?
Alhamdulillah, I'm very good. How are you?
Alhamdulillah.
So what's this Irish revolution that we hear that you're trying to take over Ihyaa magazine from Ireland?
So, you say that we hear, even though this is a rumor that you started a few minutes ago. So I don't think
there's no evidence of this. There is no dalil.
We would like to deny strongly deny such a claim.
It's your guys' words against mine.
See, this is what it is.
I think we all
this
know
is essentially
the listeners are going to side with
a media company smearing a honest podcast.
Listen, you know what we should do?
As always.
You know what we should
do?
Isn't it? We have control over here. We could just edit all this out. Anything that he says against us, we'll just edit out.
Make him seem like the bad guy.
Exactly.
SubhanAllah.
But sorry, Abeer, we cut you off. Please tell us about yourself and this amazing initiative.
Yes, inshallah. So my name is Abeer. I am a resident of Northern Ireland, although I was born in Bristol. Fun fact for you. I work as a chemical engineer in Dublin.
Whoa. So you're a fake Irish?
I never claimed to be Irish. You put that label on me.
Where Bristol were you born?
In a hospital.
Oh, that's nice.
I could not tell you the name.
No, I mean the area.
Alhamdulillah, Man, I don't know, to be honest. Like, I've only ever been back to Bristol once. I don't know Bristol at all. I was just born there, lived there for a few years. I moved around a bit, you see? Like,
I think Asad wants to know whether or not you were born in the same area as Sajid Javid.
Oh, no. Sajid Javid was born in Rochdale.
Oh, sorry.
He was born in the same area as you.
He was born in the same town as me, and then he moved to Bristol, didn't he?
Oh, mashallah.
Oh, like, alhamdulillah, we weren't born in the same place. That's good. I used to live in Newcastle as well, actually. So I moved around a bit. It was then after that I lived in Galway in Republic of Ireland afterwards, and then eventually moved up to Northern Ireland, where I've lived since about 1999. So I'm mostly, I guess you could say, mostly Northern Irish in that sense. I'm a man of many countries, or many cities rather.
Your accent doesn't sound very Irish.
It's a Northern Irish accent.
It doesn't. It sounds American.
No, he sounds Northern Irish.
Sounds quite American.
It's not Northern Irish. You're very wrong, Abdul Sami.
Very wrong.
I know my accents.
Evidently not.
Oh, clearly you don't. Because I get American a lot, actually.
Yeah.
People tend to be very confused by my accent. I don't know where it came from. Maybe I watched too much TV. I watched a lot of American cartoons, or rather American voiced kind of cartoons when I was younger.
Okay.
Maybe that's what happened. Who knows? But yeah, so I live in Northern Ireland, but I work in Dublin, so I'm in Dublin during the weekdays.
Is Dublin North?
And yeah, I'm the editor.
No.
Dublin is the capital of Republic of Ireland.
Okay,
sorry. Basically,
if you listen to the last episode or the one before, depending on when this is going to be released,
in one of the previous episodes,
one of the previous episodes, you will know that I get confused between Dublin, Belfast, and
Berlin.
And Berlin.
Berlin.
Yeah.
It's just the names. Geography is a big problem, but to bring this conversation back on track, Ihyaa magazine is a Muslim lifestyle magazine, right?
Yeah, essentially what it is we're trying to provide a platform for young Muslims, kind of particularly young British Muslims or young Western Muslims, to share their thoughts on things like culture, anything related to pop culture or trends like art, food, fashion, that kind of stuff. And essentially provide this kind of voice on these different facets, but through the Islamic kind of paradigm or through an Islamic lens. Because I think often we have we have kind of a lack of representation, not of Muslims necessarily in things like media or Muslim voices on pop culture and so on, but it's often not, there's often not that viewpoint given from kind of an Islamic sense. So sometimes like I find stuff like that hard to relate to, you know. I enjoy kind of getting the more Islamic perspective of things sometimes, or at least especially when it comes to things like lifestyle, because for me, you know, being a Muslim, it's a lot more relatable that way. So I think that was why I got involved with the platform, and why I'm very passionate about it, really, because I think it's important that we provide something like this, where we're talking about things that, you know, Muslims do. Like, we all watch films, we all go out, eat, like nice food, and have thoughts on kind of our lifestyle and fashion and so on. So it's nice to have a platform like that to speak about these things or read about these things from that kind of Islamic viewpoint, you know. So that's essentially what the magazine is about, and how it came about.
You see, when you say the magazine looks at things from an Islamic perspective, what do you mean by Islamic perspective? Because for different people, it means different things.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think mainly, to clarify, it's not like we're not like myself and the people involved. You know, we're not scholars, we're not shuyukh, we're not trying to essentially kind of provide like rulings or tackle things in a very how would you say, academical sense. It's more just that we are we're you know, normal kind of practicing Muslims, and we just want to provide our viewpoint on these different kind of things, as being kind of practicing Muslims. So like how some of us might view certain films, even, for example, it could be different depending on kind of your own cultural background, your own religious background, that kind of stuff.
Most of the articles are opinion pieces on the website.
Yeah, you could say that, definitely. I think a lot of what we do, it's like we have different kind of pieces. So like I've written pieces kind of about what it's like, you know, being like working in industry as a Muslim, that kind of stuff. We have had pieces about balancing college life as well, and even we recently had a very interesting article that kind of talked about the importance of good company and good friendship, because this is something that is very, very highlighted, I feel, as well, you know, kind of in our religion, the importance of keeping good company and building good bonds of brotherhood and sisterhood amongst ourselves, bettering each other through these bonds as well. A big part of what we like to do as well, we have a really good section called In the Spotlight, which we interview people or kind of organizations that are doing very like relevant work kind of in this I guess social media space or media space. So like we recently had a section, for example, with in the Spotlight section with Boys in the Cave, who are similar to yourselves, a Muslim oriented podcast. We've interviewed
Sydney,
other
think,
like
right?
Muslims in that space.
They're based in Australia,
Sorry?
right?
They are based in Australia, that's right.
So
Yeah.
as soon as
Shout out to them. So
as soon as you said Boys in the Cave, I just saw Samir just recline back in his chair.
But I think that mashallah, no, it's a great thing. You know, I think it's side of in a very niche area, and I think this Inner Spotlight thing is also fantastic. And I think it's really good to actually highlight the amount of work that Muslims are doing, particularly within the media sphere. I like the fact that you did give Boys in the Cave a shout out, but I think maybe Middle West Podcast.
Are you feeling a bit left out?
Got to give yourself a shout out.
I'm sure we're all feeling left out here. All three of us here.
Abdusami wants to give himself a shout out.
Go ahead.
But who are the writers that? So who is it? Yourself? Is it a team of people based around? Like, how many people are you? Can audience members just send in articles to you guys, and if they're up to your standard, you publish them? How does that work? How do your pieces get written?
Yeah, so the way it works is both myself and Ibrahim, we're the two editors. We do produce pieces ourselves, but then also we have contributors. We have currently a regular pool of contributors, and the way we approach it is, like you said, anyone can send us a piece, like to our email, or it's if you go to our Instagram at ihyaa.co. You can see our email address, and you're able to send us any piece that you think is a good fit for the platform. Anyone is welcome to become a regular contributor. Really, kind of the only requirements is just that what you kind of write about or what you want to write about fits into what the magazine is aimed, like what the kind of content we aim to put out, essentially. So as long as it's about things like culture, lifestyle, and so on, from this kind of Islamic lens, then you're going to fit in. So really, if you're like, just kind of a regular Muslim, essentially, and with an interest in writing, we're very open to receiving, any kind of work. And yeah, that's how we've been able to grow so far. Alhamdulillah, it's been going really well. We have, like I said, we have a regular pool of contributors, but we also, every week, there's always new contributions we're receiving to our email. Some of the work that I've read from people, like, even if it's stuff that maybe isn't like a perfect fit for the magazine, I think it's so impressive that the amount of talent I can see in the community and kind of the passion people have about certain topics. It's really very, very inspiring. So inshallah, the hope is that we'll continue to grow, get more kind of contributors, and inshallah, even maybe diversify our content, have more kind of subsections and series, such as In the Spotlight as well, inshallah.
I guess one of my questions to you is, you're a chemical engineer, right? So you've got this great, corporate sellout job making, pharmaceutical drugs for, overcharging cancer patients, that kind of thing. What kind of brought you into this? Just check out the low key dig there. But what brought you into Ihyaa? Like, are you like what's your passion into media? How does an engineering student get involved in setting up a magazine?
It's a great question. Apart from the malice you showed in the initial part of it,
that's just stuck. You have to get used to that. That's just his character.
That's true. Yeah, you're right about that. Really, how it came about is, for me, I've always had actually a passion for writing and reading. Like in school, when I was in like secondary school, primary school, I would read very, very frequently. I was finishing multiple books a week. And like even at GCSE level, my best subjects were English literature and English language. I think then the issue for me was back then, I didn't keep either of them on for A-level. I did the classic, Pakistani combo, 3 sciences and maths for A-level.
Oh, mashallah, beta.
I think the reason for that, alhamdulillah, I think the reason for that was, there's not much you can do there's not much you can do with English literature or English language in terms of university courses. I had a brief interest in law, so I was considering it for that reason, but that interest got beaten out of me. And yeah, like I was at the same time, I was always good at STEM subjects. No, more verbally, thankfully. Like wow. I came from alhamdulillah, my household isn't abusive, but there were some strong thoughts on the law profession.
What were the thoughts?
Not to offend anyone that did law, but I think one of the issues, is particularly my mum. My mum just really doesn't like law as a profession. I think the main reason, one reason she didn't think it was suited to me, which she's probably right. In fairness, she knows me better than I know me. I think the other reason as well is it's kind of limiting in a way. Like you get your qualification for one country, but then it is quite challenging then to get be qualified as a lawyer in other countries. You have to kind of go through the whole rigmarole again, I suppose. But anyway, we're digressing.
Yes, we know
a lawyer who did international criminal management as his
criminal management.
No, something to security.
You got the management part from Marwan.
Something to international security and something like that.
Yeah.
So us as a lawyer, so you've just really offended him.
Yeah.
He's just
basically, Asad, you're useless outside of the UK.
Really?
You are useless outside of the UK.
Thank you.
And in the UK.
I'm here all week. Thank you.
I'm only sharing what was fed down to me. Okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
Asad, you know what you are? You are a burden on the taxpayer.
If you can make it work, fair play to you.
I'm the burden on the taxpayer. Okay, then that's fine. That's fine. How's your car doing?
But so I
brand new
suppose
spunky electric car. Anyways,
mashallah.
So when we were speaking about the magazine, you're saying that, well, we mentioned at the beginning you're from Ireland and the magazine is mainly based in the UK. You've got on your latest spotlight piece people from Australia. So it seems to me that you're not really focusing on just UK bred talent. You're going international, aren't you?
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, that's part of it. I mean, that's part of the beauty of the Muslim community. You know, we're worldwide, and I think what's good as well is like you know, Australia. Although it's all the way, you know, in a whole other part of the world. Culturally, I think there's still a lot of similarity to it, to, you know, UK, kind of America, Ireland. You know, in the sense of like, okay, maybe you're not technically a Western Muslim, but like there's a lot to your culture and your upbringing being in that country that's similar to if you grew up in somewhere in England or in Ireland or whatever. So I think for that reason, there isn't really much of a cultural barrier in that way. So to me, you know, it didn't feel odd that we're interviewing people from Australia, just like it wouldn't feel odd if we had a contributor from Australia. You know, like we actually even have a contributor, a sister who actually is from North America, who recently joined us. You know, so yeah, it looks like we are branching out, inshallah.
So does that mean your vision, there's like, in terms of the vision that Ihyaa has for the future, it's really kind of stretching internationally, isn't it? You don't really aim to influence a certain.
Yeah. Asad wants you to set up a khilafah or something, by the sounds of it.
Because a lot of what you see, what you tend to see with a lot of organizations is they tend to focus on specific communities. So a good example is this very podcast, the Middle West podcast. We're open to the world, but we want to try to make a difference in our communities locally and on a national level in the UK. So a lot of things that we talk about are based in the UK, but in terms of Ihyaa, is from what I'm understanding, is you guys want to fully incorporate international Muslim culture. Kind of, if you understand what I mean, the things that unite us.
I do, yeah. I think, I mean, what's good about the platform, especially now, is, you know, of course we live in the social media age. So because of that, it's very easy for a platform like this to become big internationally. Like, you know, when you look at the statistics actually on our Instagram posts, we're able to, and our website, we're able to see we don't just have readers, you know, from the UK, from Ireland or America. We have readers from like Eastern Europe or, you know, Muslim countries and so on. So that does show our reach, even if it wasn't intended, is already international. So to me, yeah, it's a very natural thing for the platform to maybe branch out in that way. And I think the reason probably it started more as kind of a British Muslim thing in terms of our heads was for you know, for us founding. Okay, I don't live in Britain, but you know, it's that was kind of what we know. You know, like we know what it's like to be kind of Muslims living in England or Muslims living in Northern Ireland and Ireland and so on. So that was kind of how our mindset was at the start. But definitely now, you know, now that I've been, you know, we've been producing for since the start of this year, and I've seen how already we've been able to grow. I definitely think, yeah, expanding more internationally is probably the way to go, and it'll, inshallah, that way as well. Then we can have a more impact on the Muslim communities at large as well.
So is Ihyaa only digital, or do you have print as well?
It's only digital at the minute. Print is something I still find intriguing, because with some platforms it's still a very, very popular medium. Like books are a perfect example. People, you know, like I have a Kindle, and as much as I love it because of how convenient it is, it still doesn't replace the feeling of just having an actual book in your hand. And similarly, like comic books, for example, people still love physical comic books. So I don't think print media is dead in that sense. So who knows, in the future, maybe we could try it out. Like, but for now, yeah, we're digital.
So question about kind of going into more of the content of it. So how do you kind of, or how much do you try to focus on, you know, kind of challenging paradigms, or kind of going into some of the intellectual challenges that we as Western Muslims face, which I think is a key part of our existence almost. I mean, we've done a couple of roundtables where we discuss this, and we have a few more planned. But want to get like your perspective, especially because your scope is so broad. So what about, you know, things like secularism, liberalism, and kind of do you think that kind of, how does that impact your, because to me what it sounds like with a lot of the lifestyle stuff, some of it guts into kind of a lot of Islamic consumerism, how do you guys take a view on that, and do you guys have a lot of discussions around what that implies, because you guys seem to be really motivated by a broader vision of bringing the community together?
Yeah, so it's a very good point. So I think for us, we do definitely want to challenge certain aspects of kind of, as you said, the Islamic paradigm, things like liberalism, certainly, things that, and secularism that we understand, that directly impact us growing up kind of in these Western countries, especially. And we do have pieces that kind of tackle, issues that are tough, things like mental health, or like we had a piece by a sister who was like talking about kind of her experience being like a black Muslima. We have had pieces talking about the differences between culture and religion, and how they can sometimes come as conflict or how culture can sometimes end up contradicting religion, but end up kind of taking precedent due to kind of that pressure that is often on us being of certain cultures. So when it comes to stuff like that, I think it's important to tackle it, definitely. And it's important to write about these things, because these things, at the end of the day, they're real. These are real things that we go through as Muslims. Not everything is just about, halal consumerism and things like that. There's so much more to it than that. So I would say the only thing, like for us, when we tackle these things, we do go through a process of deeply thinking about it, because with these pieces, especially if something is more nuanced, like sometimes things like liberalism, secularism, and those discussions, or even modernity, these are quite nuanced discussions. So I think it's important to basically have a thorough conversation about them, which, like often myself, Ibrahim, and Khalid, we regularly discuss these things, and discuss with our contributors as well, whenever they share pieces with us on the direction of the piece that it's going. But I suppose to get to the point, it's something that, inshallah, I do hope we continue to kind of tackle these kind of things, and I hope we continue to get better at it. Like for me, ultimately, this is something that I'm learning as I go as well, in a way. Like I have friends who have been fortunate enough in that what they have studied is like, they've studied kind of more arts and humanities and these things, and arts. So they're more accustomed to theological kind of debates and discussion, whereas for someone like me, I'm a little bit newer to that world, if that makes sense. I think the only kind of area really we don't tackle is we don't really delve into political matters. My own choice behind that is simply I'm not knowledgeable enough to talk about these matters, so I wouldn't feel comfortable delving deep into some of that discussion. But other than that, when it comes to things that we grow up and go through as young Western Muslims, especially, definitely I think it's important to tackle some of those topics.
No, mashallah. Literally, I think you kind of highlighted some of the diversity in the work that you go through. So whether about having pieces on talking about ideological discussions, or even through art and culture, mashallah, even just going through your Instagram, I think you have 12,500 followers already, and I think you guys just started almost about a year ago. I guess things have been moving really quickly, literally probably moving at 100 miles per hour. So how's that journey been, and is the sky the limit in terms of the future?
Like alhamdulillah, the growth has been amazing. Really, it's all down to the hard work of my fellow editor Ibrahim and the founder Khalid, and of course our contributors who, mashallah, consistently produce such amazing work. Really, I think definitely with this, I don't see a limit to it myself. I think the limit, if there's going to be any limit, it would come from us forgetting why we started it, forgetting to renew our intentions and the purpose behind it. So inshallah, I think as long as we keep our intentions pure and focused on, providing this service, providing this platform for Muslims, which is the aim of the platform, inshallah, then I think the only way up, the only way to go is up, So alhamdulillah, it's been a good start. Inshallah, it continues.
I think Thaqib was also wondering, because a huge part of it is culture, and of course a lot of part of culture is also to do with food.
Why are you telling me what I'm wondering? I will wonder whatever I want to wonder.
I was going to say, will Ihyaa kind of host its own kind of halal food convention maybe, or something like that? Jenny, this is what Thaqib was thinking.
I'm always thinking about food, especially when I'm fasting. But that is a great. So I think London Excel they host a great Muslim food festival or something, and that's something.
The halal food festival.
Yeah, and I don't know how. So how big is your community currently? Do you guys have like meetups and kind of physical manifestations, possibly involving food in this case?
So our team, we haven't met up physically yet. Our team is very remote. Like I myself am in Ireland. The rest of the team, apart from one sister who's in the US, are in the UK. However, at the same time, there's still distance between us. We're kind of all from different cities, and so on. So unfortunately, that's a great idea. I love the idea of just meeting up and just eating. Because like similar to Thaqib, I also enjoy food and thinking about it, and especially eating it. But no, we're a very remote team at the minute, and inshallah, the aim, I think, the hope rather, is to meet up more frequently. It's been a busy year for all of us. Like myself, Ibrahim and Khalid did have plans to meet up by now, but things unfortunately haven't worked out that way yet. But inshallah, I really hope to start meeting more of our contributors in person, getting to know them better as well through that means. But right now, we're very much a remote team.
From what I gathered, when you're saying you're a remote team as well, you said how long you been together for? A year, around about a year.
Yeah, around about a year. We came together. Yeah, about a year ago, I would say.
So, question. Did you find it difficult to initially find people to contribute to the magazine? In terms of you being editor, was it difficult for the founder to find you? Was it difficult for the founder to find your co-editor as well, or the other employees, if you want to call them employees? Because a lot of problems that happen within startups is the fact that people don't really want to put their entire trust in something it's not guaranteed, is it?
Yeah, that's true. Especially if it's something you don't really know, it's tough to put your trust in it. How it came about was so I about 2 years ago I started kind of writing pieces just on my own personal blog. And I was sharing these on Facebook and so on. So it was actually it was Ibrahim who reached out to me initially about the project. Funny enough, he was very vague about it at the time. It was very secretive. He just told me essentially that this kind of idea existed. There wasn't even a name given to me at that time, and he thought it might be a good fit for me and was asking if I'd be interested to be involved. And I said, yeah, okay, that sounds good, inshallah. And then it was actually at Fos's winter conference last year where I met Khalid for the first time. And shout out to Fos's.
Fos is doing great work anywhere.
Literally the same line used all the time. XYZ is doing the great work everywhere.
I think what it is that I was a bit jealous that you never got to be part of Fos's.
I never wanted to be part of Fos's, to be honest with you. Yeah, have that one. I want them apples.
Let's get back to the topic.
But yeah, so that was where I met Khalid for the first time, and then we spoke a bit more about the idea. And yeah, after that, it kind of I just became. I didn't intend to have the title editor-in-chief. It was kind of just given to me, and I went with it because it sounds cool. And then
what does it
started
mean?
Looking for contributors from then on. I actually don't know. I'm going to be honest. I had to Google it, and even then, I'm not completely sure. It just sounds cool. It kind of reminds me of I used to play.
Yeah, as far as I know, the editor-in-chief. Well, each newspapers or magazines have editors.
Yeah.
And no, I don't think anyone uses the term editor-in-chief anymore because it's generally just seen as editor. The editor of the magazine is the editor of the newspaper. They're the people who basically see the vision of the newspaper and they direct the vision of it, and all pieces go through them. The boss, big boss man.
Okay, so mashallah, so
big boss man with the mahogany desk.
Are we speaking to the big boss man right now? Mashallah, 6-figure salary.
Listen, I'm fasting. I don't want to be given a boost to my ego or have too big a head right now. So I'm just going to ignore these comments. Inshallah.
Well, Ihsan
Ihsan magazine. That's it. No, but Asad, you're right in that at the start, I think it was actually tough for us to get contributors. We did have some interest for sure, but it was a bit slow going. We were very small initially. But after we started producing content, that's when things changed. Definitely, it became much quicker. Like even now, it's a weekly basis that we have new contributions from people, new kind of requests for people to get more involved, and so on. And I think once the ball was rolling, that's really where the biggest kind of growth of the platform came about. Initially, it was definitely tough. I think, like you said, with any kind of startup, the start is always going to be the toughest because you're trying to just figure it out, get your bearings, put your team together essentially. And but once things get going, it's it just really took off, alhamdulillah, which is great. And our team has really grown as a result of it. So I think definitely last couple of months especially has been phenomenal, really.
I think that's actually very similar to even how we started off in terms of we met up a few times, tried to start, figure out what it is exactly we want and how we want to do it. Eventually we thought, let's just do it, and we just started making some recordings, and from there it kind of just took off. We're into episode 9 now, I think, and of course we're still not there yet, nowhere near the following that you guys have, but I think the kind of advice you can give to anyone who wants to start something up, just do it. Listen to Nike.
Nike?
I don't know. I was going to say Nike. I'd never say Nike, but our international audience in America who are listening.
Yeah.
But the quick question.
Well, it is an American company, so
that's
maybe
true.
you should stick to that and call it Nike.
No, it's not.
I love how you just
came
came into the conversation with his American accent, going, "Well, it is an American company."
Having said that, it is a Greek name, and it's pronounced.
How did we get here?
Anywho, my question was
just do it.
I had a question. Sorry, why Ihyaa? What does it mean, and why did you choose it?
Ihyaa Ulumuddin.
So the name essentially, it wasn't myself who came up with it, but it's an Arabic as well as in it's an Arabic as well as an Urdu word. I believe means restoration. So I think that's kind of where the inspiration came. I think it's Imam al-Ghazali as well has a book called Ihyaa, so that's likely where the inspiration came. Personally, I think the fact that it means restoration is very fitting, because it's like, I think in general, especially now, with like we're seeing like even people of knowledge now become quite social media savvy, like becoming like much more active on Instagram and Twitter and so on. And essentially, there is this kind of revival of this Islamic discourse through these platforms, and I think that's really important, because ultimately, whether we like it or not, that's where Muslims go. That's where we spend most of our time these days. It's on Instagram, it's on Twitter, Snapchat, whatever, Reddit, and so on. So as Muslims, if we're not, utilizing these platforms or embracing them, I think we're just going to be left behind in the dust. So that's why I actually really like when I see, scholars and shayukh using things like Instagram to their advantage. Like right now, my Instagram feed, alhamdulillah, it's pretty great. Every time I go on there, especially now because it's Ramadan, like everyone's story, it's like Quran reminders, or it's like another reminder by a shaykh or something. Then of course there's the odd, iftar post there as well. People like flexing what they're having for iftar. In general, the name for me is very fitting to what we're trying to accomplish. It's providing this platform for young Muslims.
I think
restoring is a good word for it, I feel.
The whole magazine as a whole is quite sincere. From what I've heard of it so far in these 30 minutes, I think it's I think the Muslim community within the UK, internationally as well, has had a big problem with identifying within a certain kind of brand of different cultures or whatever you want to call it. And I think magazines like these are authentic ways of giving people identities, especially Muslims who are struggling to find identities, who are struggling to fit into these kind of cultures that promote. So we have fashion, for example. The magazine has a column on fashion. I just looked at the website. We have food, for example, as well. Now, if you look at mainstream media outlets, when they look at these topics, there's nothing that a Muslim can go, oh wow, that's fantastic, I can relate to that. But in terms of a magazine that fully focuses from a Muslim narrative, I think it's quite, it's a very sincere, and you learn to appreciate sentiments like this over time. So on behalf of the Middle West podcast, we would like to first thank you, Abeer, for making this magazine.
I think it's one of those ones where...
Or being editor-in-chief.
Being editor-in-chief.
Being editor-in-chief. I think it's one of those ones where, especially in the current climate, we're having to kind of challenge the current narrative that's been set. And I think the best way to actually challenge the narrative is to actually kind of reclaim the narrative. And to own our story.
Plug.
I don't know what you're talking about.
You know exactly what I'm talking about.
Of course, Femiso does encourage reclaiming a narrative. It's part of a study session that we had very recently, where Abeer came to, alhamdulillah, which is where I actually found out about Ihyaa magazine. But it's one of the very few, media outlets that's actually out there trying to kind of change the current discourse and owning, the narrative. And we can only encourage other people to kind of either go on to carry on to contribute towards you guys, or even with other places. But literally, the best way for us to own the stories, to create our own stories. But yeah,
absolutely, yeah. Like I think ultimately, often, I think it's very important to have pride as Muslims. Often I think we're still very much in this mindset of like, our deen, our faith, our religion is still not really something that we can be too proud of or be too strongly identified by. And often it kind of, I still feel like there's very much sometimes it's still an inferiority complex amongst kind of Muslims, young Muslims, especially living in Western countries. Like we have such a incredibly strong desire to fit in, to be seen as like British Muslims or American Muslims or whatever. But like, I don't think, like for me personally, I think ultimately things like British, American, these are just labels. Like ultimately what you should strive for is just connecting first and foremost with your deen. After that, everything else, I think it'll come together much more easily. Like who you actually are, who you want to be. And that's for me what is so great about like working on this magazine is the fact that the mindset I'm able to write with, it's it does feel very sincere, because it's coming from that kind of Islamic viewpoint that we all strive to identify with. Ultimately, like for us, it's not just a matter of our faith or what we believe in. It is our it's our lifestyle. It's what should embody every aspect of our life. So for me, it's very important that ultimately we continue to strive towards that, inshallah. And
one of the things that I was kind of thinking about is it seems like a very youth-targeted initiative, and I think one of the things you mentioned is bringing kind of shuyukh and making them more relatable. I'm assuming your target market is probably something like millennials, but do you have any shuyukh that you bring on to guest write for you guys, especially kind of bringing that relatability aspect? I think with the start of Al Maghrib Institute and onwards, that's been a very big thing, especially in the West, is where we have a big drive to make our sheikhs and our sheikhas more not just cool but also more accessible.
Funny.
Like you can go up to them and ask them a question, which for me growing up was like, it was a bit, you didn't just go up to the sheikh and just ask him a question. So
because you live in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, that's we haven't had any shuyukh kind of directly contribute on the platform. I think that's a great idea though, and like I said again, it's part of the beauty of social media in a way, is like the amount of shuyukh now that utilize it, receive questions on it, post their answers on it, and so on. It's made them very, very accessible, made them relatable, and so on. So definitely, I think it's a great idea, and for us as a platform as well, to start kind of working with people of knowledge in the community, either as contributors or even as just advisors or something like that. So definitely, I think that's a very good suggestion.
One of the things that I kind of like, I know it's an English language magazine targeted at the West, but even internationally, I think English is becoming more and more common. So I don't know if you have a breakdown of how many people listen to you. Like, one of the things I found very interesting is we actually have quite a few listeners in Muslim majority countries. So one of the things is, do you guys have contributors from non-Western countries? Would you consider that? And what do you think are kind of some of the things that make us as Western Muslims? I use that term loosely because I don't know if I qualify yet. But what do you think makes us different, or what are some of the needs or strengths of us as a community?
Yeah, that's a very nuanced question.
There's a lot of nuance in this conversation, isn't there?
Yeah. So we don't have any contributors at the minute from Muslim countries, but we do have readers and people who follow us on Instagram from Muslim countries. I think it is something I think potentially we may consider. For us, really, like I said before, it was more that we were really more focusing on kind of Western Muslims or Muslims from non-Muslim countries, but like I find that there's because of things like globalization and just kind of how we all, Muslims around the world tend to all kind of consume the same kind of entertainment now as well. Like, I watched Avengers Endgame before Ramadan. My cousins in Pakistan also have seen it, so because of that, there's very little difference in terms of the kind of pop culture we consume, and even the lifestyle in many ways would be very similar. Like if you're living in Pakistan to living in Britain, of course there'll be differences. And I think that could be something that could actually really, it could be quite another, I suppose, element to the magazine. If we have people from Muslim countries, you have then another slightly different viewpoint then on things like lifestyle and culture. So I think it's something we could end up exploring more in the future, certainly. Really, I think, again, why our focus was what British or Western Muslims, or however you want to phrase it, was that's ultimately for us involved with the magazine, especially at the start. That's what we are, that's what we're familiar with, that's what we know. Like myself, I technically lived in Pakistan for a year. My parents moved back there when I was very young, but that I was far too young to have been impacted by that. So even though in many ways I do associate myself quite strongly with my ethnic origin, at the end of the day, I'm very much influenced, and I've been very much shaped by the environment I've grown up in, which is predominantly Ireland and Northern Ireland. So I think it does have an impact, where you grow up, the society you grow up in, especially if it's a Muslim society or a non-Muslim society. One thing I noticed, like Abdul Sami said, I attended the Femiso study session, Reclaiming Your Narrative, which was held in Budapest back in March. So it was a week-long session, and it was very interesting because it was my first time meeting Muslims from so many different countries. There were Muslims from France, Germany, Austria, Bosnia, Macedonia. Was there anyone from Bangladesh? I can't remember.
Yeah,
Abdul Sami
originally.
Can I say?
He showed up at the end. He doesn't count.
I'm not Bangladeshi.
I'll give over. We've had this conversation.
But
I was born in Karachi. Sorry, I was born in London. I was born in London, but I'm
as long as you're meeting, not from here. Yeah. One final question.
Yeah,
I want to ask us this one question before we wrap up.
Yeah.
In terms of your contributors, what does in terms of diversity, how does it look? Obviously, I would assume that you have the same kind of trend of contributing styles. Everyone has a different style, so how would that look if I were to open up Ihyaa magazine and click on random article and then compare it to another article?
Oh yeah, so definitely, we have it's in terms of the content we produce, it is very diverse. In terms of the writing, it is very diverse. Even if you go to our front page, you'll see pretty much every piece, the last 7-8 pieces have all been by different contributors. So they've all been on quite different topics. And then the writing style, of course, will vary person to person as well. Like we offer, like we don't really constrict people to a certain writing style. It's very free flow in that sense, as long as, of course, grammatically a person is well written, and as long as, of course, again, the content is in line with what we're trying to promote. We'll pretty much we won't have any issue with it, and we'll give you the okay. So, and in terms of our pool of contributors, it's a variety of Muslim brothers and sisters. Again, kind of different stages in life. Some are in college or some are in university. Some are like myself working. Some are doing a gap year, and slightly different age groups. Again, it is mostly kind of 19, 20, 21, 22 year olds. That's kind of our in general, majority of our contributors are around that age. I'm one of the oldest. I'm 24, so I'm one of the oldest in the team. But yeah, I think it's very important to have diversity in what we do. Like we're not really a monolithic people. Like, you will not find one Muslim who is exactly the same as another Muslim. We have differences, whether it's different cultural backgrounds or slightly different views Islamically, just based on different what madhab we follow, stuff like that. So or even where we grew up. Again, of course, it can be different. So I think it's important that we have, in order to be able to relate to our audience and provide content that they want to read, it's important that we have a strong variety of contributors, which alhamdulillah we have so far.
Abeer, it's been a pleasure having you on this podcast. It really has been a good episode. Inshallah, to the viewers, check out Ihyaa magazine and follow them on their social media. Inshallah, you can benefit. You can follow us on our social media as well, or Twitter at The Middle West PC, and our Facebook as well.
And you can also find us on Ihyaa magazine's website on the
Inshallah, in the foreseeable future. Just bump in.
Inshallah, I'm sure that will happen.
Yeah.
Barakallahu feekum. I really appreciate it. Jazakallah for having me on.
You can email us at the middlewestpc@gmail.com. You can listen to this podcast on all major podcasting platforms: iTunes, Libsyn, YouTube, Google Podcasts, etc., etc. This is the Middle West podcast team signing out. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.